Alright, so the AI custom has been developed. We saw that codec conversation with Strangelove and Snake. She's got the AI custom pod for Zeke, so we can get that developed. We got all these weapons and items started. And it's been a while since we've been in MSF. We definitely need to get started with organizing MSF. So let's take a look at Zeke. I want to take a look at Zeke because while I was going back for the Strangelove memoirs, I did get a lot of parts for Zeke. So let's go over what we got right here. We got a couple of walk units. Well, we had the walk unit. We got a new power unit. We got a leg part. And we need one more head scrap so we can get the head part. Then Zeke will be complete and we can get started. I got some more optional parts. I got another jetpack from fighting the pupa. I didn't get any radomes. I did get some armor from the, what is that, the cocoon boss fight. And I did get a railgun from fighting the chrysalis. The first time I fought the chrysalis, I didn't get it. The second time I did get it, that was off screen. So we're looking good. We only need a radome for the optional parts, and we do need another head scrap for Zeke. So we'll be able to get that in some more subsequent AI boss fights. Alright, let's organize our staff. Let's see what's going on right here. We got our girl Amanda finally out of the sick bay. So let's get her set up into a unit. You can put her into the combat unit so the gorilla's morale will rise, but I want to put her into the intel team because that's where her rank is highest at. So we'll put her there. And let's continue organizing our staff. We got a couple of commandos. These are all guys that I got as volunteers from the recruit function. So let's put those boys in their unit in their proper spot. We got to get rid of 3 D ranks. So you normal, donkey, zebra, and sailfish. I gotta go.
You're fired.
And we're looking good right here. Let's check out R&D. Get that RPG that we just got the specs for. Let's get that developed. And we're looking good. We're waiting on that Fulton to come back. And that's it. That's all we got in R&D. I don't think I sent anybody out in Outer Ops. Nope, I didn't send anybody out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get some more volunteers from the recruit function, reorganize Outer Ops, and then I will see y'all in the next mission. Alright, so let's do the next mission that is unlocked. Let's do the Fulton recovery mission.
Let's get this mission started. Complete the mission and proceed to the Fulton recovery point so we can get you back alive and well. Good luck out there.
Alright, so before we do this mission, there are a lot of briefing files that cover what's been going on since the defeat of Peace Walker. So we're going to cover those right here. We're going to talk to Miller, and we're going to talk to Miller about the Queen Bee of MSF.
By the way, Kaz, who do you think's our queen bee?
Good question. I was thinking maybe Paz.
I was thinking Strangelove.
Well, I can see that. Or maybe Cecile.
On second thought, I might go with Amanda.
How about this, Snake? We'll have an army of queen bees.
Sure. Why not?
You know, Snake, you're right. As long as we're soldiers without borders, we're going to be a target. We need our own deterrent.
Yeah, we're going to be stepping into a lot of different conflicts as we roam the world, each one unique, and with its own set of geography, ideologies, and politics. If we're going to intervene in those kinds of situations, we need the threat of a Metal Gear.
Unless we want to end up like Che Guevara did in Bolivia.
Well said. Our army without borders doesn't have a land to call home. We're nomads, wanderers. What we need now is a sheepdog to guard our flock.
Right.
Maybe it's not the way the boss would have gone about it, but there are places in this world that need us, and soldiers that need MSF. And as long as we're needed, we'll keep on moving. Ours is a journey that never ends. We're the real Peace Walkers.
Alright, let's talk to him about a great leader.
Hey, Snake, I've been thinking. Maybe Che couldn't find a place for himself outside the battlefield either.
How so?
He led the Cuban Revolution to victory. That's quite an accomplishment. He could have called it quits there and nobody would have blamed him. But he left behind a loving family and a cabinet post to plunge back into the struggle. First in the Congo, then in Bolivia where he met his end.
You're overthinking things. Che went back to the battlefield because he was needed there. Read his farewell letter, then you'll understand.
Some say he was too idealistic to fit in with the government.
Too many scruples, most likely.
Maybe so, but I still can't help thinking the reason you look up to Che is because you see something of yourself in him. You left your country behind and plunged into battle. You wander from one battlefield to another, going wherever you're needed.
Che was a revolutionary as well as a warrior. He took up arms to fight for his beliefs. I don't do what I do for any ideology. I'm a warrior. Nothing more. Nothing less.
Okay, boss. You're right. Just wanted to see how we stacked up against a real hero. Can you believe the CIA and KGB were actually in cahoots?
Never thought I'd see that at the station chief level. But I'd heard stories of operatives in the field being on friendly terms.
Seriously?
Most espionage takes place in political hotspots, as you'd expect. But there aren't that many of those kinds of places, especially in a small country. Hang around long enough, and you're bound to run into fellow spies. Like it or not. You start saying hello, and soon enough you're eating dinner together.
Strange bedfellows, huh?
Well, I don't know about that. At any rate, this kind of fiasco is what happens when spies get too familiar. Hard to believe, but some people will betray anyone and anything if it suits their interests.
The strength of human is in its appeal to human emotions, but its weakness is in its susceptibility to those same emotions. That's why the tide in the intelligence world is shifting towards SIGINT, a network of cold, digital data, where feelings are irrelevant. Snake, you got a sec?
What's up?
Prime Minister Gary of Grenada is asking the UN to set up an agency to study the UFO problem.
Grenada? That island in the Caribbean?
He gave the press a bunch of photos. Says they prove the existence of UFOs. One of them caught my eye.
That's the...
Yep. The weapon Huey called the chrysalis.
Kaz, this is the photo I gave to Chico. He said something about selling it off as a photo of a UFO.
Looks like it found its way into the pages of a magazine.
But why would the Prime Minister of a country believe tabloid trash like that?
There's been reports all over the Americas of abductions and cattle mutilations lately.
You think that true?
I think the CIA might be involved.
If they are, then Gary could be.
I know. If he digs too deep, he's gonna get himself into trouble.
But Grenada's right next door to Cuba.
I guess that would make it tough for the CIA to intervene, in a sense.
Upsetting the domestic balance of power could cause it to go red all of a sudden.
True. Well, in any case, it's not like we can do anything about it. Just wanted to let you know.
Gotcha. I'll be careful not to let any more photos leak.
March 10th, 1945. 381,300 cluster bombs were dropped on Tokyo. Japanese houses at the time were almost all made of wood. In that single day, a third of Tokyo burned to the ground. My mom lost her family and home in that raid. She had to move to Yokosuka and live with her cousin. The B-29s kept on coming, razing other major cities throughout Japan without mercy. Then, in August, they dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan surrendered to the United States at last. After that, Yokosuka was flooded with American soldiers come to occupy the country. My mother was still in her mid-teens, and she learned from her cousin how to survive in that town, by servicing the troops. That's how she met my father, and how I was born. My father was an officer serving with the government section of Allied GHQ under General Whitney. Whitney was known as MacArthur's shadow, and my father rode his coattails to a pretty high rank. While he was in Japan, he treated my mom like a wife. After he went back to the States, though, she never heard from him. I wasn't born until after he went back. My mom raised me as a single mother. She used the money my father left her to open a shop selling cigarettes and stuff to occupation troops. It was a decent living, but I didn't have citizenship. They're working to change the law now, but back then if your father was unknown, you couldn't get onto the Japanese family register. And in Japan, that means you can't be Japanese. So as I watched the American soldiers around town, I said to myself, I'm a son of America, the victor. My hair and eyes were different from the skinny, downtrodden Japanese around me. I told myself I'd leave this country someday, and return to my true homeland. When I was around 10 years old, my mom fell ill, pretty much leaving me to run the shop in her place. One day I found a single picture of my father in the back of a drawer in the shop. I'd show it to the American soldiers who came into the store. A few years went by before one of them told me who he was. I know him, that's Miller. I started asking other guys, do you know where Miller is now? Can anybody tell me where Colonel Miller is now? Turns out he'd left the service and was making a living as an instructor for soldiers in Virginia. It was one of his students who finally told me that. I wrote him a letter in English. I'm your son. I want to go to the United States. Day after day I waited. Then just when I was about to give up, the post office delivered my future to the door. My father sent me some money. I thought my dream was going to come true. I was only thinking of myself. So I went to my bedridden mother and convinced her to let me go. My father arranged for a car to pick me up. It was jet black. When the neighborhood kids who'd always made fun of my hair saw it, their jaws practically hit the ground. I put my mom in a hospital and went on my own to America. When I met my father for the first time, he was living alone in a big house. He told me he'd lost his son, his American son, in Vietnam. He showed me a picture of my older brother. I guess that and his divorce left my father feeling lonely, which is probably why he finally took an interest in me. He'd retired from teaching. He was stooped over, could hardly walk, but he gave me two things: the name Miller and money for school. I used it to learn English and then go to college. America was exhausted from years of fighting in Vietnam. They were waging war in a foreign land, while at home, people were screaming for peace. Right after I graduated, I went back to Japan, alone. My father refused to see my mom. It was the first time I'd seen her in years, and she wouldn't even look at me. At first, I thought she was mad at me, but that wasn't it. Disease had taken her mind. A disease she got while she was young and desperate. She didn't even know who I was. I said, "Mom, it's me, Kazuhira." As I spoke, the sound of my own voice rang in my ears. Katsuhira, the name my mom gave me. It means peace in Japanese. I was Japanese. At least, I was the son of this tiny Japanese woman. It was then, for the first time, that I understood the reason, the emotion that inspired my mother to give me that name. She'd watched her hometown and family go up in flames. Her body and her mind were ravaged by war. And yet she chose to have a child named Peace, with a man who was once her enemy. Japan lost the war. But what good is war as a measure of a country? Since the war and up until the oil shock last year, Japan's economy has grown every single year. It's on its way to becoming a stronger country than ever. I stayed in Japan and joined the JSDF. I was 22 at the time. I did it to pay our bills. But it wasn't just that. I could have found work anywhere, and I knew it. And still, I couldn't think of anything else to do with myself. 2 years later, I didn't have to worry about Mom's hospital bills anymore. I left the JSDF and went back to the States. My father was already dead and buried. I was told he'd shot himself in the head. America crushed Japan, but it also crushed my father. My American dream was over. After that, I drifted around and, well, you know the rest. GHQ made women like my mother. It made Japan's peace constitution and the JSDF. And it made me. I was spawned by war, but I don't want to die in one. I won't die for a country, and I won't live like a pauper. I won't have my fate decided by some family register. So as long as I stick with you, boss, I've got a good feeling none of that will happen. Snake, the R&D team came up with something new.
What's this?
It's a cardboard tank. It's got enough room for 2 people. Same as any other cardboard box. Apparently the guy in front drives, and the guy in back is the gunner.
Hold on, Kaz. Who the hell came up with this thing?
I'm sorry, boss. He meant well, I swear. I know it's nowhere as good as a real tank, but still.
It's brilliant!
Huh?
The perfect synthesis of stealth and attack power. Compact, elegant design. The finest example of a weapon I've ever seen. Seriously, Kaz, I need to meet the guy who made this. I want to shake his hand.
You serious? Snake, look at it.
It's a masterpiece, in every sense of the word. You don't agree?
No,
What is that? A tank? I like it.
Paz?
I hate tanks, but this one I think I could get used to. I love that it's a zero-emissions vehicle. It will not hurt the forests of Costa Rica.
What?
Nice work, Kaz. I see I made the right choice making you second in command.
But is there something wrong with me?
That cardboard box is a fun item to use, but that's a co-op's weapon, and we're not doing co-ops yet. Speaking of Paz, we just heard from her. Let's see what she can do in Mother Base. Let's see about her role in Mother Base.
I have a favor to ask you, Snake.
Name it.
I want you to give me a job here. I want to help out.
You sure? You just went through a hell of a time. You should probably take it easy until you're settled.
Thank you. But there must be something I can do. You would not want me near a gun. But I am a decent cook.
Now there's a skill we can use.
Put me on the mess hall team. I think I can handle it. Once I get used to it, I will even add in some Costa Rican recipes.
Sounds like a plan.
So it was a good idea to put her into the mess hall team. Let's talk to Huey.
Nuclear deterrence means preventing the use of nuclear weapons in conflicts between states. But what about other situations?
Like what?
Terrorism has been on the rise in recent years, from separatist movements to far-left extremists. What would happen if nuclear weapons fell into terrorists' hands? Without a state, that is, without territory of their own, the chances of having nukes used against them are slim. They have no reason to fear a nuclear strike. Conversely, they have no reason to hesitate to use nukes against their adversaries.
You've got a point. All the ICBMs and strategic bombers in the world amount to nothing against a terrorist group.
Right. Of course, this is all still hypothetical. Countries keep their nukes under tight watch. There's no immediate danger of terrorists getting their hands on them. But the day may come when the proposition of nuclear terrorism makes nuclear deterrence theory a dead letter.
Nuclear terrorism. Interesting.
Flash forward to 2005 and you got the Shadow Moses incident.
Snake, how much do you know about the U.S. Homeland Air Defense Network?
I don't know much about what goes on up in the sky. What I do know is that NORAD tracks Santa Claus on its radar.
Nice one. I didn't know you were a comedian, too.
Huh? No, I'm serious. It's true, NORAD tracks his... Listen to me. Every December they set up a hotline and...
Okay, I get it.
He's real, I tell ya. He used to bring me presents and...
Oh, big boss. That boy believes in Santa Claus.
Okay, Snakey. As all good little boys know, keeping tabs on Santa Claus is a very important job for NORAD. But they also have another mission. The one they were created for. And the system they set up for that has been hijacked by Coldman.
You mean Peace Walker's fake data transmissions?
NORAD's early warning system is composed of DSP satellite-mounted infrared sensors and an array of surveillance radar stations across North America. The network sends out warnings to NORAD at Cheyenne Mountain, where the data undergoes human evaluation. Peace Walker, on the other hand, has to make its retaliation decisions autonomously. So it's set up to automatically receive the same data as NORAD through covert channels. Those channels were also used on the test platform to telemeter the AI's decision-making. Peace Walker reversed the system to transmit a fake warning about incoming nuclear missiles outside the usual exercise schedule. I mean, the system could have used better safeguarding. Nobody's going to argue with that. But cracking the AI? That seemed unimaginable. And you can see what happened.
Alright, so we talked to Huey. So let's finally talk to Stranger. She's new to the unit, so let's talk to her about AIs.
AI stands for artificial intelligence. It refers to a man-made machine possessing an intellect on par with that of a human being.
Is that even possible?
Possible. You've seen it with your own eyes. What the AI weapons are capable of. How Peace Walker carried out the boss's will in the end. No mere machine could ever choose to sacrifice itself like that.
I just can't see how a bunch of circuits and switches could have a will of its own.
It's called the ghost in the machine, Snake. And it exists.
What did you mean by the ghost in the machine?
Oh, that. It's a term coined by the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. You've heard of Descartes, yes?
I think, therefore I am.
That is the one. Descartes espoused the dualistic theory of mind and body. He believed that our thinking minds exist in a separate dimension from our bodies, which are governed by the laws of physics. But if that were true, then couldn't you say that a mechanical body, inhabited by a ghost mind, is a human being? Ryle criticized Descartes on those grounds, saying such a thing surely wouldn't be human.
Why'd you bring it up?
I wasn't thinking of Ryle in particular when I said it. I simply thought that if a person is composed of a machine and a ghost, perhaps the opposite is true as well. Perhaps, by placing a ghost inside a machine, we could, in effect, give birth to a new person.
And that was your idea for the boss AI?
The moment you ripped the memory board out, the mammal pod ceased to function. It should have been dead. And yet, Peace Walker righted itself, singing a song of peace. I couldn't help but feel that her soul had come to inhabit Peace Walker.
Let's say, hypothetically, there really was an intelligent machine. How would you prove it? What's the difference between a high-level computer and an AI?
It depends on what you choose to define as intelligence. For example, Snake, listen to my voice talking to you now. Suppose it were an AI.
Say what?
What if the living, breathing me sitting here drinking tea and talking to you were actually an AI, programmed to simulate my thoughts and my voice?
You're nuts.
No, I'm not. You couldn't prove I was a real human being, could you?
It'd be... No.
So if an AI is so advanced you can't tell it from the real thing, wouldn't you call that intelligence?
I'm not quite convinced.
But that's only one way to look at it. It's roughly how Dr. Turing explained artificial intelligence. The test I described is called the Turing test, in his honor.
Yeah, well, sounds like a bad joke to me. That singing monster of yours put me through hell. If I never meet one again, it'll be too soon.
Shame. And I was about to let an AI take my place in our conversation.
Don't even think about it.
Dr. Alan Turing is known as the father of computer science. It was he who formulated the basic theory of AI. During the war, he worked for GC and CS.
The government's cryptology school. The one that broke Enigma.
The very same. Without him, they might never have been able to decipher the Germans' code. But then, they arrested him.
Why? Weren't his some of the greatest contributions to winning the war?
Homosexuality was a crime in Britain back then, and he was gay. I know exactly how crushed he was. I feel it's my duty to further his AI research.
Like the imitation game, huh?
Huh. You know it then. The clue that inspired the Turing test came from a trifling little party game. You exchange written notes with another person behind a screen and try to guess their gender, whether they're a woman or a man, pretending to be a woman. It's surprisingly difficult to tell the difference. Man or woman, human or machine. What do the differences even mean? Dr. Turing was fascinated by the differences between men and women. Perhaps that's what led him to formulate his test.
What if you hadn't used the boss as the model for the AI?
What do you mean?
If the end goal is MAD, it seems like there are more suitable models out there. A military chief of staff, or a nuclear technician, even the president.
Patriotism, leadership, good judgment. Each of those qualities is essential when deciding whether to launch a nuke, and she had them all.
Wouldn't the president, too?
It's not enough. She had the will for it.
Will?
Let me explain, Snake. Peace Walker is a standalone weapon. It has to decide on its own whether or not to launch a nuke. It can't turn to anyone else for advice. It can't do its job if it's not prepared to take sole responsibility for the fate of the world. I know of no other human being who could bear that burden.
That's it?
There were technical considerations, of course. To begin with, the female brain is a more appropriate model for an AI.
Oh, wait, the female brain? What do you mean by that, modeling your AI after the female brain?
Snake, what is the human mind capable of that a computer is not?
Being lazy?
Interesting response, and not incorrect. But the answer I was looking for was empathy.
Empathy?
The ability to feel for others, to be more precise. Love for a child. Pity for the weak. Grief for the dead. All of these are particularly well developed in the female brain.
That's stretching it a little.
On the contrary, it's perfectly reasonable. The male brain, on the other hand, may be well suited for systematic thinking, but it's less able to empathize. In that sense, it's closer to a computer. So if your objective is to make the AI think more like a human...
You need to teach it how to empathize like a woman.
The novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, deals with this very problem. In the book, an empathy test is used to distinguish between machines and human beings. As machines become more and more advanced, our society will gradually become more and more systematic. Our cities will teem with robot-like people, unable to feel for others. We cannot allow that to happen. Computers must learn to empathize. The same goes for humans, only more so.
Well, what about yourself? You make these claims, and yet I've never seen you empathize with a real person.
It's true. Until now, I was a prisoner of death. It was my intention to die upon the completion of Mammal's development. She was my one reason to live.
But you changed your mind.
I did. Because she taught me the dignity of living. My eyes are open now. I want to go on living and seeing real people.
Huh. I see. Is it really necessary to make machines think like humans? I think empathy would get in the way of making the decision to retaliate.
I admit, human thought may not be fully compatible with level-headed decision-making. Then again, is there such a thing as non-human thought? The moment computers became so advanced that they could calculate faster than human beings, a new dream was born.
Dream?
If we can create a machine that can do advanced mathematics, why can't we create one that can think like a human? The 19th century author, Auguste Villiers-L'Isle-Adam, wrote a book called Tomorrow's Eve, in which the protagonist fashions an artificial woman to serve as his ideal lover. I believe the idea of creating an intelligent being with our own hands is one of mankind's oldest dreams.
So AI is a product of people's dreams, then?
Not only AI, civilization itself is the process by which mankind gives form to its dreams. But not all dreams are pleasant. Some have expressed fears about non-human intelligence.
Yeah, they want the benefits with none of the risks.
Some fear that intelligent robots might rise up and rebel against their human masters, as portrayed by the Czech writer Karel Čapek in his Rossum's Universal Robots, or in the 1970 film Colossus, the Forbin Project, where intelligent supercomputers in the US and the Soviet Union join forces and plot to subjugate humanity. Isaac Asimov offered a specific solution to these fears with his 3 laws of robotics, which demonstrated that while robot intelligence is different from that of humans, the two can coexist. In order to endow computers with intelligence, we must first have a thorough understanding of what intelligence is, And that is where the need for a practical and feasible expert system arises.
So what's an expert system?
The AI housed within Peace Walker began development as such a system. An expert system is a type of proxy program by which a computer makes decisions as an expert would. The program, Mycin, for example, is a system that decides which kind of antibiotics to prescribe. The system asks the patient a series of questions to narrow down the range of appropriate drugs.
So you program Peace Walker to prescribe live nuclear warheads instead of penicillin.
What I realized, however, was that a simple expert system wasn't up to the task.
You need more than expertise to launch a nuke.
Indeed, expertise is a necessary prerequisite, but insufficient on its own. Deciding to launch a retaliatory strike requires consideration of a wider range of factors. In such a scenario, the entire global situation becomes the criterion for making a decision.
Makes sense. You screw up the prescription and the whole world goes into anaphylactic shock.
A weak AI that only has a limited range of knowledge upon which to base its decisions won't cut it. Therefore, I had the AI study the boss's thought patterns, thus creating a true expert system. A strong AI.
You couldn't leave the world in the hands of something with anything less than absolute worldview.
I could have built a simple expert system in no time at all. Say, how would you like a system that decides which guns you should equip according to the mission's parameters?
I'll pass. I'm not going to leave my life up to somebody else's judgment. Especially not a machine.
With current technology, AI are inevitably enormous in size. But as circuit integration continues to advance, they will become even smaller. As small as human brains, and perhaps smaller than that. And in the meantime, robotics will continue to advance as well, to the point where we can create androids, robots that resemble humans. And then...
And then what?
Well, I don't need to spell it out for you, do I?
Don't tell me you're thinking of making an android imitation of the boss.
Surely the thought has crossed your mind as well, of one day being reunited with her?
Enough. I don't want any part of it.
I see. I didn't mean to offend you. In reality, AI is more likely to evolve in the opposite direction anyway.
The opposite direction? What does that mean?
More and more, AI are becoming systems that specialize in mass information processing, without human intelligence, thought, or emotion. A machine that has no individualism or sense of self, but rather behaves as a collective, exhibiting the qualities of a society.
Like a beehive.
Yes, it aggregates data collected by individuals and determines how the collective will act, just as honeybees travel between the hive and flowers. The key to achieving that will be networking AI together.
I don't know how to say this, but that kind of gives me the creeps.
But if your goal is to control society, it's the better model to use. It lets you filter data, disseminate only what you want disseminated. Of course, I myself have no interest in an AI without a shred of life to it.
Earlier, you called the mammal pod a butterfly. Not a pupa or a cocoon, but an imago.
Yes, the AI that came before the mammal pod were works in progress.
Works in progress.
They were enough to keep the frame running, but not enough to make decisions about nuclear retaliation. They weren't quite complete. They were pupae. Only when I added the boss's data did the AI take on its true form, becoming a butterfly and taking flight.
And that's why the nose art on Peace Walker was a butterfly.
I gave the mammal AI the code name BS Imago. BS is short for boss.
Huey called that gigantic unmanned chopper a chrysalis. Is that another one of your AI code names?
Yes, you're referring to the TJ Chrysalis 6000. There's also the GW Pupa 5000, the TR Cocoon 7000.
I get it. A hovercraft type and a treaded type. And those letters on the front. TJ, GW, or whatever. Those are initials?
Correct. The initials of the American presidents whose faces are carved into Mount Rushmore.
Then you're missing one.
I assigned that one to the reptile pod. A.L. Aurelia 8000.
Aurelia. Another word for chrysalis. A pupa just before it emerges.
All of the initials, except for B.S., were of Coldman's choosing. I chose mine from the storied ranks of British royalty. M.S., A.V., E.W.
What do those stand for?
You can't guess. Why, Mary Stuart, Alexandrina Victoria, and Elizabeth Windsor.
All queens. Of course.
Are you familiar with the film 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I've heard of it, but...
Of course not. I didn't expect you to be cultured enough to appreciate such things.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway...
2001 features an AI called HAL, a highly advanced system that controls an exploration spacecraft. It can converse with people, and even play chess.
Huh. Now where have I heard that before?
The way HAL was portrayed was truly superb.
How so?
HAL is given secret orders that not even the ship's captain knows about. Naturally, he's not allowed to divulge them to the crew. The stress of it causes HAL to crack.
Crack?
Go crazy. Though there are those who interpret it differently. One by one, HAL kills off the crew until the captain finally shuts it down. The film offers amazing insights into AI, their growth, their utility, their faults, and their fear of death.
Well, you must have found it useful in your research then.
Must you always be so utilitarian? It doesn't matter whether or not it's useful. What matters is that it inspired me.
Then it was useful.
Never mind. The portrayal of Hal wasn't the only wonderful thing about the film. It was full of hints about the future of human evolution. Truly, a film for the ages.
Strangelove, when did you and the boss first meet?
Did she ever tell you about what she saw in space?
Yeah.
I saw the same thing along with her. The Soviets beat America into space with Sputnik, and so America rushed to be first in manned spaceflight. NASA used her as their top secret guinea pig, launching her deep into the cold blackness of space. I took part in the project as a scientist.
You were there with her?
Yes. For a brief time. We were one and the same, she and I. We sought each other out, completed each other. Did you know that inside every woman there's a universe? And that we are able to sense this in each other? We connected because of our empathetic female brains. As time went on, I began to have doubts about offering such a noble soul as sacrifice. Why did she have to... The flight test was a narrow success, and she miraculously made it back alive. But her mind and body were horribly mangled, and there was nothing I could do for her. We were no longer one and the same. She went away, and I, having nothing else to live for, immersed myself in AI research, hoping that no one would ever have to make her sacrifice again.
I never knew.
It's not really worth knowing. We were ships passing in the night, that's all. Perhaps someday I'll tell you the long version, if you're interested.
That was quite a warm welcome you gave me at the base in Costa Rica.
Sorry about that. But I simply had to know.
The boss's final act.
Yes, by inputting her thoughts and actions into the AI, I was imbuing it with her mind. The only thing I couldn't understand was her final act.
Operation Snake Eater.
Official history says she betrayed her homeland and defected to the enemy and was killed by you. But it didn't make sense. The boss would be the last person on Earth to betray her country. It was logically inconsistent.
It was, wasn't it?
That internal inconsistency prevented the AI from activating properly. Just as Hal malfunctioned in the film, I understood the reasoning, but I had to have proof. Proof of her final act, her true intentions, one way or another.
So you tried to squeeze it out of me, huh?
As a matter of fact, I did. Your silence was the very answer I was looking for.
That white horse the boss rode.
The Andalusian, yes.
How'd it get to Costa Rica?
I went looking for it. It was her final witness. Even if it couldn't speak, I found it and brought it here.
Where? I thought for sure it'd be blown to ashes by those MiGs.
I searched the ends of the earth for that horse, and found it at last in a horse market in Britain.
Britain? Are you saying it came all the way over the Ural Mountains, through Europe, and across the English Channel?
Who knows, really? Perhaps someone took it there.
Wait, the thought never occurred to you that it might be a different Andalusian that only looks the same?
I can't prove it. Or rather, I couldn't.
What do you mean?
You should know best of all, that horse wouldn't let anyone ride it. And believe me, I nearly killed myself trying. The only one it allowed on its back was you. That was the proof. Though I hate to admit it.
And to think, I ran it to its death.
But in that last run, it regained the glory of its youth, using the last of its strength to pursue its former master. Any horse would wish for such a fine end.
What do you make of Peace Walker's final act?
I recreated her thought patterns exactly. It was exactly what she would have done. The world's most empathetic mind weighed the past, the future, and the entire world, and decided not to retaliate. Merely knowing that is enough for me.
So, what you're saying is, we don't need deterrence to have peace?
I didn't say that. What's important is that we wish for peace. MSF needs a way to protect itself from the might of nations. Survival requires pragmatic thought and action. But you must still retain your ideals. If the gap between reality and those ideals ever leads you to lose them, I doubt MSF will survive.
Strangelove. Is that a code name?
No, just a nickname. Don't tell me you don't recognize it. From Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. It's a film that came out in 1964. A dark comedy about the absurdity of nuclear deterrence.
You were in a movie?
No, stupid. I got my nickname because of that movie.
Why? Because you look like the doctor in the movie?
No, that Dr. Strangelove was a man.
So?
Back when I was at ARPA, I kept a photo of the boss on my desk. I was totally engrossed in my research and showed no interest in the opposite sex. Plus, I had a photo of a woman on my desk. The fools around me turned it into a cruel taunt, calling me Strangelove. Even for a bunch of shut-ins who never went out to the cinema, that title seemed to ring true with them. Anyhow, in their eyes, homosexuality was something strange. They were incapable of seeing things outside the lens of their own standards. Being strange means you have your own unique point of view. I rather considered it an honor.
So, you were with ARPA before you came here, huh?
Yes, back then it was really the only place I could make a living from my AI research.
And before that?
I started out at NASA. That's where I met her.
When Boss went into space?
Yes. It was that incident that turned me away from aerospace engineering. Space is entirely too hazardous a place for human beings. That was why I felt an immediate need to develop AI. As it turned out, rockets later became much safer, and mankind reached the surface of the moon. In any event, it was a hollow Cold War victory. When you get down to it, a nuclear missile is just a rocket with a nuclear warhead strapped to it. Thus, taking the initiative in the space race was tantamount to a military show of force.
But the budgetary strain was too big for Washington or Moscow to handle.
Yes, and then there was the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War, and then came détente. Having leapt ahead of the Soviet Union with its moon landing, America shut down the Apollo program in '72. It was around then that ARPA was downsized and renamed DARPA, the D standing for Defense. With few prospects for continuing my AI research, Coldman's invitation was a godsend. It was also a chance to have them collect data on her.
The end result being this mess.
But we did learn something valuable from her. The nobility of peace.
Why'd you agree to come here? To Mother Base?
You intrigued me.
Me? Hold on. You're not planning on modeling your next AI after me.
Not a bad idea, but I have no intention of ever again attempting to transplant human thought into machines.
Oh, that's a relief.
You are the man who inherited the boss's will. You're gathering people around you, even now, shaping them, building a new organization. I'd like to see how it turns out.
You're not planning to go back to AI research?
I never said such a thing. Of course my work will continue.
Here?
In my eyes, the growth of MSF as an organization is analogous to the development of the nervous system. The way you become intertwined, stimulate each other, branch out in new directions. It's really quite inspirational.
Interesting way to put it.
Of course, I intend to repay you for your hospitality. The fruits of my research will be at your disposal. Why not assign me to the R&D team? I promise you won't be disappointed.
You know, that ID card I got from Huey wouldn't let me into the lab.
Of course not. I deactivated it.
Why?
As though I'd let him into my lab.
Oh, you don't seem to care for him much, even though you two are in the same field.
Oh, please. For starters, I can't stand that wishy-washy attitude of his. If he's got something to say to me, he should be a man and come say it in person, not write some furtive letter.
But if his card doesn't work, how's he supposed to—
And another thing, the way he always demeans himself. Every other sentence begins with, I could be wrong, but... Why can't he just do what he does and be confident about it?
Well, there was the thing about his dissertation being plagiarized.
The real problem is he doesn't have a whit of independence in him. In Costa Rica, and even back at NASA, he was always following people around, asking if there was some way he could help. Why doesn't he stop his whining, take a stand, and face up to me?
I think I know how he feels.
And to top it all off, he seems to enjoy referring to himself by that nickname I gave him. I simply don't get it. How can he be so submissive?
So, Huey was a nickname you gave him.
That's right. I took it from the name of a drone in the science fiction film Silent Running.
Drone?
It's a type of worker robot. The way he follows people, just waiting for them to boss him around, is so similar. I couldn't help myself. Oh, it's an American film directed by Douglas Trumbull, the man who did the special effects for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Imagine that. A scientist who likes science fiction.
And that's not all.
There's more.
He's a man.
Hang on. I seem to remember you saying he should be more of a man.
Yes. Well, he is an awfully good scientist. Without his reptile pod, my mammal pod wouldn't function, just as the cerebrum can't exist without the cerebellum and the brainstem. He did a fine job of designing it. I'll give him that.
Huh. That sounded suspiciously like praise.
It's merely an objective observation. I like people who possess the will to move forward. I have no time for those who refuse to take control of their lives. Until he does, my opinion remains the same.
So, you and Cecile seem to be enjoying yourselves back at that lab.
What are you insinuating? I only kept her because I didn't want our secret to be known.
And the personal baths? You could have left her in there alone and locked the door from the outside.
Yes, well, she seemed anxious, so I...
Now, why would she be anxious?
She was beautiful. I was only admiring her beauty.
She was terrified.
I never meant her any harm. She knew that. I know she did.
But she felt like she was in enough danger to run away.
No matter what I did, if Coltman found her, she would have been... You're right. The truth is, I wanted to save her. but not if it meant forestalling the completion of Mammal.
So you made it easy for her to escape?
Do you really think I am that soft? I'll admit security wasn't exactly tight. It wouldn't have been difficult for her to escape from the building.
Seemed like she had a rougher time after she got out.
At any rate, I never did anything to her to deserve any blame. Is that clear?
Okay. I believe you.
Huey's probably mentioned this, but just to be clear, there's a limit to the parts we can produce here at Mother Base. Therefore, I've built Zeke's AI using memory boards you pulled from other AI weapons.
Will that work?
In the human brain, individual functions are spread across multiple regions. The same is true of AI. Multiple parts sharing the same function interlink to strengthen that function. For example, the more sensor memory boards you have, the greater Zeke's search and detect capabilities will be. Install more movement boards, and you'll increase its mobility.
Meaning the AI's capabilities change depending on how much memory we give it?
Exactly. The more boards you install, the more powerful a function will be.
Alright, so we talked to Strangelove for a while. We learned all about her. We learned a lot about AI. And I got a strange vibe from her talking about AI. There's a whole lot of foreshadowing to what the Patriots would become eventually in the Metal Gear series. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get my Chandler Dweeker, however the hell you pronounce that boy's name, and we're going to get set up for this mission. We're going to get this mission started.
Your current objective is to retrieve the prisoners.
Alright, so if I remember this mission correctly, you need to S-rank this mission so that you are able to unlock a special camo. I think it's called the Leaf Camo. It might be the Splitter. I can't remember. Honestly, I do have a very bad memory. So I'm going to be moving through this area as fast as I possibly can. But what I did do when I was going through mission setup is I did select a Chandler. So let me hit the pause menu real quick. And when you see that yellow dot on the map, the Chandler has an ability where it allows you to see all the hidden items and all the hidden prisoners in this area. So a Chandler is definitely good for those of you that are playing the game for the first time and don't know where the secret items are at. And for those of us that have played the game and have terrible memories like yours truly. So I'm going to see if I can try to go through this area as fast as possible.
Don't move.
Get all the goodies that I can remember where they're at.
Don't move.
And then use the Chandler skill
Don't move.
afterwards. So we got those suckers held up. Let's get these items that I know are up in this area right here. Take those rations. There are some specs for, I think, the aerial mine that's in this area, so that's why I'm moving through this area. I'm trying to get through this area as fast as I can so I can get the S rank. But I do want to get these specs as well. So I think the specs are right here up in this little, yeah, there we go. There we go. Got those bullets and we got those aerial mine design specs. Alright, so we're looking good right here. I think we're looking good on time. I don't know how long it takes for you to get the S rank in this mission, but the Fuerte La Ladera, this fort area, is the last area in the mission. We only got to get one guy out. And then we can extract via Fulton recovery. So let's get this mission done, baby. You got to be careful up here on the fort because these boys be fooling around, man.
What's going on?
Oh, almost walked up on him. See how I almost walked right up on top of these dudes? See how I almost walked up on top of these dudes? This boy got shot in the booty 2 times. And the guy on the other side of the gate might see him. That could be a problem.
Watch it. There might be bombs planted next to those prisoners.
You can also take the claymores and bring them back to the unit as well. But we're gonna get the hell up out of here.
Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal. Good job. Return to base.
And just like that, the mission is complete. I could have extracted more soldiers, but I wanted to get this mission done as fast as possible. And I did get it done as fast as possible. I think I might have been 22 seconds. I don't know what the clear time is it takes to get that S rank, but I'm probably going to go through it. You definitely need to S rank that for the leaf camo, and I'll see if I can do that on a secondary run. I'll do it off camera and see if I can get that leaf camo on a secondary run. But we did get those mine design spec, those aerial mine design specs, so that's a good thing.